The pending GOP border protection bill is a huge deal, said Rosemary Jenks, a government relations director at NumbersUSA. This is a GOP blueprint for 2025 if a Republican is elected to the White House, she added. The White House's May 8 veto threat said. The bill would cut off nearly all access, for migrants, to humanitarian protections in ways that are inconsistent with our nation's values and international obligations. In addition, the bill would make processing less efficient by prohibiting the use of the CBP-1 mobile application to process non-citizens and restricting the Department of Homeland Security, DHS's parole authority, such that successful programs, like Uniting for Ukraine, would be prohibited. The bill would also reduce authorized funding for essential programs including the Shelter and Services Program that provides a critical source of migrant support, funds for state and local governments, and reduces pressure at the border by quickly moving migrants northwards. The nation's values statement refers to the invented Cold War narrative that America's homeland is really a nation of immigrants. The White House's statement comes as the administration is opening the southern border to a huge flood of job-seeking migrants. The Biden administration is also welcoming a new wave of 100,000 H-1B visa workers and 450,000 OPT workers via the fraud-ridden programs, despite mass layoffs of Americans by Fortune 500 companies. The Republicans' border bill faces a floor vote on Thursday. That is the same day that the administration plans to lift the Title 42 border barrier that protects Americans from millions of wage-cutting, rent-spiking economic migrants that will likely sideline many older, sicker, and unwanted U.S. workers. The Republicans' plan would sharply restrict the administration's quasi-legal policy of letting many job-seeking migrants through the parole pipeline. It would also restrict the administration's ability to quickly bus migrants from the border to shelters and job training centers in many U.S. cities. But the GOP's business and agriculture factions refused to support the bill until it was amended to protect the current inflow of cheap labor visa workers. For example, the bill sets lower wages for the H-2A workers that are used by farmers. There are some things in the bill that are compromises, for sure, said Jenks, adding. There's nothing about legal immigration in there. It's all about actually ending the border surge and disincentivizing illegal immigration. It shuts down pretty much all of border loopholes widened by Biden. It fixes Flores. It stops the abuse of parole. It basically says that the Biden administration can't use parole except in very specific instances. It requires that asylum seekers at the border be either detained, removed to a safe third country, or be returned home. It fixes the UAC, unaccompanied alien children, problem. It's really great. The bill is titled the Secure the Border Act of 2023. However, the House GOP leaders have very few votes to spare because of likely unanimous Democrat opposition. GOP Representative Thomas Massie, Republican Kentucky, is threatening to vote against the reform because it forces companies to verify that job applicants are legally allowed to take jobs. The White House's veto threat restates the party's determination to let more migrants into the United States to compete for jobs and housing against Americans. The Biden-Harris administration's approach to border management is grounded in this strategy, expanding legal pathways, emphasis added. The bill restricts lawful pathways, which are critical alternatives to unlawful entry. Democrats justify the migration by saying the migrants are fleeing economic poverty, but say nothing about the poverty being inflicted on Americans. What House Democrats want to also make sure that we focus on are these root causes of migration, Representative Pete Aguilar, Democrat California, told MSNBC. he continued. People are fleeing difficult and dangerous conditions. They're fleeing economic issues. They're fleeing because of climate change, and they aren't able to farm the land that they used to farm with. We need an orderly process to let them in. That's absolutely something that we need to do, he said. The federal government should spend more money to help job-seeking, wage-cutting migrants travel through the United States, according to a May 4 statement by Representative Ruben Gallego, Democrat, Arizona. I've heard directly from leaders in our border communities, and it's abundantly clear that they, through no fault of their own, are simply unequipped to handle the surge of migrants that are expected when Title 42 ends. They need tangible resources like buses, beds, personnel, and funds to both process asylum claims in an orderly way and keep their communities safe. Since January 2021, the administration has admitted roughly 6 million legal, illegal, and quasi-legal migrants. The huge inflow is roughly 3 migrants for every 4 Americans who join the workforce. This migration has killed at least 1,000 migrants and has imposed vast civic and economic burdens on Americans and their local governments. Those burdens include lower living standards, more civic chaos, and a tougher future for American kids. Extraction migration. The federal government has long operated an economic policy of extraction migration. The policy extracts vast amounts of human resources from needy countries and uses the imported workers, renters, and consumers to grow Wall Street and the economy. The migrant inflow has successfully forced down Americans' wages and also boosted rents and housing prices. The inflow has also pushed many native-born Americans out of careers in a wide variety of business sectors, reduced native-born Americans' political clout, and contributed to the rising death rate of poor Americans. The population inflow also reduces the political clout of native-born Americans, because the population replacement allows elites to divorce themselves from the needs and interests of ordinary Americans. The policy also sucks jobs and wealth from heartland states by subsidizing coastal investors with a flood of low-wage workers, high-occupancy renters, and government-aided consumers. The colonization-like policy has also killed many thousands of unrecognized migrants, including many on the taxpayer-funded Jungle Trail through the Darien Gap in Panama.